And welcome back to the Power Accountability League. I am your pal, Dan L. This is my channel. I am probably related to Cal L. Today's video is entitled Grudges. Grudges. And you might be thinking to yourself, well, Dan L., I personally am better than most people because I don't hold grudges. What's the point? Well, let's talk about grudges. The United States of America, which was founded in the late 1700s, was founded by a bunch of colonists who held a grudge against the King of England. And I would say that was the right choice. I would say if you look at the overall grand scheme since the founding of the USA, I think the colonists who had a grudge against the king were right to act on that grudge. And how did they act? Well, they obviously fought a revolutionary war, a war for independence, and they severed their ties with England, but not completely. They just said, we're not under the rule of the king anymore. I mean, it's not like they stopped communicating with their friends and family over in Europe, specifically the United Kingdom. Let's talk about the end of World War II. At the end of World War II, I believe the United States and probably some other allies kept a gigantic garrison of military folk. Is there such a thing as military folk? A large number of military personnel, a very large military presence in Japan and Germany, probably in Italy. I haven't done enough research on it, but let's just say Japan and Germany, and let's assume it would make sense to do it in Italy as well. And they did that for a long time, at least 50 years. You could order; they're still doing it to this day. Why did the USA, and again, I'm going to assume some of its allies, I'm assuming the United Kingdom, as well as some others, kept some military personnel, a large contingent of military personnel, in Japan and Germany? Well, grudge. The United States was holding a grudge against Germany. Well, they didn't do that at the end of the First World War. Good point. At the end of the First World War, there was an armistice signed, and officially Germany lost the First World War, and whoever else was a party to that war. I mean, on the side of Germany. Um, with the Treaty of Versailles, I believe. Anyway, the point is, no grudges at the end of World War One. Hey, you signed the surrender, whatever the armistice, and so we're not going to hold grudges. We're not going to be angry at you. Sure, you started a world war, the first. It's called WW1, meaning First World War, and Germany was responsible. But let's not be petulant. Let's not be rude. Let's not be small and petty. Let's not hold a grudge against Germany. How'd that work out for us? I believe a generation later, we're into our Second World War. Now, at the end of the Second World War, as I've just mentioned a few moments ago, we kept a large presence, military presence in Japan and Germany. And again, just for the sake of argument, I'm going to assume there's plenty of military personnel in Italy as well. Um, though Italy kind of bought itself out of the seventh ring of hell because they murdered Mussolini themselves. The German people did not murder Hitler. The German people did not rise up against Hitler. Now, yes, I know about the assassination attempt a year before, and also the people in Japan, they didn't rise up against the Emperor of Japan. So in Italy, at least, the Italian people, to their credit, had enough common sense to kill Mussolini, who had been their dictator for, I think, at least 2 decades. Before Mussolini was put to death, I think he had been the dictator in Italy for, again, I think it was about 20 years. You'll have to go do your own homework on that one. But the point is, the Italians said, we've had enough of this jerk, and they murdered him, and I think they strung him up upside down, hanging from hanging from something, to show that they're distaste. So the Italians, I think, got really soured on the whole Axis plan of ruling the world. At least the good ones did. There might have been a few Italians who were jerks, but I would say the good Italians were like, hey, we were on the wrong side of history in this war. Shouldn't have been best friends with Adolf Hitler and the Emperor of Japan. Anyway, so let's go back to Japan and Germany. Again, we held a grudge, and I would say the Allies held a grudge. I'd say France. France created nuclear weapons so they didn't have to worry about Germany in the future. France had a very simple, straightforward solution. Next time Germany rolls into France, we're just going to nuke them, which I have no problem with. Be like, that's terrible. No, if you're a Frenchman, Guess what? There's borders. You have borders around France. You're allowed to enforce those borders. And if another country, oh, let's say Germany, rolls into your country, yep, you've got the right to fire off a nuclear weapon or maybe a few of them. I don't. It's your country. I'm not a Frenchman. I don't know what you're going to do. But the point is, people held a grudge at the end of World War II. And then there's a new, and what about the relationship with the USSR and the Allies? USSR was part of the Allies in World War II. And then new grudges grew up, and then the USA held a grudge against the USSR because why? Well, it was a Cold War between the USA and the USSR, but up until 1949, it was just we don't like your whole Marxism, communism, international collectivism, trying to be a dictator of the planet. That was kind of the attitude of the USA towards Stalin and the USSR. We don't like you. Yes, we put up with you during World War II because we had to, but now that the war's over, we just want to let you know you're not our favorite cup of tea. But the USA and the USSR, I would say, didn't really develop a nice, keen hatred for each other, or at least, yeah, a really cold war that was very cold, so cold it wanted to become a hot war. But anyway, that didn't happen until around I'm going to say 1949. That's about the year, I think that's the year in which the USSR detonated an atomic bomb. The first country to ever detonate a nuclear weapon was the USA in 1945 over Japan. And I believe the second country to ever detonate a nuclear weapon was the USSR in 1949. And guess what? They stole the plans from the West. I think it was obviously there were a lot of technical information in the USA, but I believe, I could be wrong, you'll have to check me on this. I believe it was British. They funneled the information out of the USA into England and then from England over to the USSR, meaning the USSR stole intellectual property from both the USA and the United Kingdom, by the way, because the United Kingdom also had a role in the development of atomic weapons. Not a direct connection, but scientists in the United Kingdom were in communication with scientists in the USA, so they could, But I doubt, I don't know the extent of it. I doubt the United Kingdom was directly tied to the Manhattan Project. But again, I would imagine that the scientists in the USA had friendships in Europe with scientists in Europe, and from time to time they probably tapped into those friendships along the development path of nuclear weaponry. But anyway, even if I'm completely wrong about that, we do know this. The USSR detonated an atomic weapon in 1949, and they wouldn't have been able to do it that quickly if they hadn't been able to steal ideas and information from the West, specifically the USA. But if you want to broaden it to the West, I'm okay with that as well. So there was a grudge. And from 1949 all the way up to 1990, so let's see, let's work out the math. 59, 67, that's over 40 years. So for over 40 years, there were grudges between USSR and the USA. And you're thinking, well, God, I just hate grudges. Well, that grudge actually turned out to be a good thing. Because if the USA and the USSR had embraced each other, I could tell you just from recent events, from current events, what would have happened is the ideas in the West would have been supplanted by the ideas in the East. The ideas of Chairman Mao and Joseph Stalin and Brezhnev and Khrushchev and all those people, those ideas would have been triumphant over the ideas from the West. That would be bad. So you're probably thinking, well, would you please get to the point? I've already gotten to the point. Grudges are not a bad thing. Well, let's go. Let's take a look at nature. In nature, certain animals avoid other animals. Is it because they have a grudge? Well, I would say it's because they're being prudent. What about human beings and the relationship with nature? Does it ever appear to you that all of the natural life on planet Earth is afraid of human beings? Is it because they have a grudge? Well, I would say they're being prudent. I would say the word grudge and the word prudent are synonyms. When you're holding not always, so it has to be a rational grudge, but yes, a grudge is usually you being prudent. If someone has harmed you and your family and you're holding a grudge against them, you're doing the prudent thing. If they've proven that they can do damage to you or your family or your community or your city or your state or your country or your planet, probably a good idea to hold a grudge. So this video is all about not listening to people say, you know what, I'm just one of those people. I just don't believe in grudges. Well, you don't believe in being intelligent. You don't believe in being rational. You don't believe in being logical. You don't believe in being prudent. You don't believe in common sense. If you're against all grudges because, well, I'm just better. I'm just better than other people. I can't help it. The way I'm wired is not to hold grudges. Well, you're an idiot. And I get it. People are like, well, I disagree with you. That's fine. Everyone's allowed to disagree with everyone else. But I'm right. If you don't hold any grudges ever in your entire lifetime, you're stupid. You have a problem with intelligence, IQ, whatever you want to call it. I like to call it common sense. You have a common sense deficiency, which is going to eventually harm you and your family and maybe your community, meaning your neighborhood, or maybe beyond, maybe your city. So the point is, grudges, if they are based on in rationality, are a good thing. Don't ever let anyone tell you, well, I think people who hold grudges are small little people. They're just petty and they're petulant and they have issues. No. Most people, not all people, not all, most people who are holding a grudge are doing it for a valid reason. Now, and yes, there are examples of people who hold grudges for really stupid reasons. You've seen this within families. You see this all the time. Siblings, for something that happened in childhood, so now they have a grudge. Now they can't get along later, and you've seen it in other strata of the family structure. You see it parents and children, or children and grandparents, or aunts and uncles. The point is, you do see it within the nuclear family structure. This whole grudge idea. And a lot of times it is very immature and it can't be justified. But when you talk about grudges that are not intra-family, is that a word? I just made that up. But if you're not talking about grudges that are part of little beefs within the family, little fiefdoms within your family structure, and you're talking about grudges that extend far beyond the family, like I said, most of the time, whether it's one society having a grudge against another, one government with a grudge against another government, they're not always correct, but most of the time, the majority of the time, whether it's a large entity like a government which has a grudge against another government, or whether it's an individual with a grudge against an individual, or whether it's a group with a grudge against another group. Now, I know if you're thinking about sports, that's an example of being a silly grudge. Like, I hate, my team and that team has never gotten along, or we hate each other. That's posturing. That's kind of silliness. I mean, we get it. It's kind of fun. It's fun. Human beings, for some reason, have to get this out of their system. But so when you see people in sporting competitions who are like, well, I root for my team and I root against your team because I've got a grudge against your team. You see it all the time. I mean, I don't know, Michigan State, Iowa State. I don't know, Utah State. I don't. I mean, I don't know all the dynamics there. But I'm going to say if those teams have this rivalry that borderlines on a grudge, it's kind of for fun. It's kind of just people being silly. Sometimes they take it too far. I remember down Auburn and Alabama had a grudge, I believe, and there was like someone poisoned a tree that was like 150 years old or something like that. I'm like, that's taking your grudge too far. And again, that's immature. But for the most part, when you're talking about geopolitics, or whether you're talking about your own personal well-being, most of the grudges, the majority of the time, the grudges that are held are done for a good reason, because it's all about self-preservation. Whether it's you as an individual or your family or your society, if you value your family, if you value your society, you're going to hold grudges against entities that are a threat to your society, to your country, to your family, to yourself individually. So anyway, that's today's video, and thanks for stopping by. And you have a grudge-free day? No, you have a day where you exercise a grudge if it can be justified. Take care. Bye bye.